there's a lot of films that I've referenced, a lot of TV films, TV and programs and films that I've referenced when I design a film, you know, and so when I'm looking for ideas, you know, you'll watch a film and you'll think, oh, that's a great part, and I'll copy that, or I'll steal a bit of that, and because of that, you know, and then I've been lucky enough to work on some of those films that I've referenced, so Resident Evil and like Monster Hunter, which is the film I've just done recently. But the one that's always got away is Star Wars. And I've been offered Star Wars many years ago. They decided to do a series about Star Wars. They were going to do 400 episodes. And I went for the interview for the job, and I got the job. I met with a producer called Rick McCallum, who produced all the original 3 Star Wars movies. And I got the job, and we started talking about how it was going to work and where we were going to film it. And then all of a sudden, George Lucas sold the Star Wars franchise to Disney. And Disney decided, we're not making a series, we're going to make another huge raft of films, lots more films. And so that was the one that got away. And I was really disappointed, because I would have loved to have, because I mainly do sci-fi stuff, you know. You don't call me if you want to do a period, Downton Abbey or a crime. You call me if you want to blow something up. Well, really it starts with the script. So the writers, I'm lucky enough to work with some really great writers, Russell T Davies on Doctor Who, and I'm actually working with a lady at the moment who's also from Swansea, called Mika Watkins. And Mika Watkins' grandfather was a very famous poet. I don't know whether you've heard of Dylan Thomas. Yeah. Well, Dylan Thomas had a best friend who was called Vernon Watkins, and he was a very famous. He wasn't as famous as Dylan, but he was still a very famous poet. And Mika is his granddaughter, and she's from Pen-y-Bryn in Swansea, and she's very young. She's only, I think, 26, but she's a very good writer. And we're doing a series called Origin together at the moment. We've just done the first series has just gone out on YouTube because it's for YouTube Red. So if any of you are over 13,
some of us,
I think you're allowed to watch it. So if you put Origin Episode 1 into YouTube, it'll pop up. But it's not for the faint-hearted, because it's a little bit scary. But it's a good series. But anyway, so it starts with the scripts really, and working with these great writers who come up with these fantastic ideas, and then they call me in to visualize it and work with them to realize it. So really, you know, the script gives us most of the ideas. You know, when Russell wrote about the Tardis, he said he just simply wrote in the script, the Doctor walks into a cathedral-like space. So that was brilliant for me, because that meant that I didn't have any sort of, he didn't say it was this or that. It meant that I could really do whatever I wanted, you know. So then you just start researching, and in the case of the TARDIS, I could look at all the other TARDISes that had been created. But of course I wanted to make mine slightly different to those. I wanted mine to be quite organic, and the idea that you grew a TARDIS out of glass and stone and plants and stuff, rather than you make a TARDIS. So the ideas start with the script, and then they sort of develop in my head as we go through, you know. Doctor Who was incredible, because it was very hard work, but it was one of those jobs that when we started doing it, you know, yes, Doctor Who had a long history. You know, I think it started in 1942 or whatever. It was a old show, but when it came back, we didn't really know how successful it was going to be. You know, we just went at it and did the best possible job that we could. You know, as you do when you do anything that you work at. So at the beginning there was no pressure. Of course, as soon as the first season went out, the series went out, everybody loved it, and then all of a sudden you realise that, oh my gosh, now there's pressure. You've got to really keep the momentum, keep it really, you know, really good. And of course, every episode is a different period. So every week, literally every 2 weeks, you're shooting a different period. It might be Victorian, it might be science fiction, it might be spaceships, could be anything, you know. So you had to keep the brain going and working really hard. So it was a really difficult show to do, but because of that, it was a really lovely show to do, you know. And because people loved it so much, you really felt that you were making something that was really special, you know. Oh well, two very different beasts there, you know. The TARDIS is a sort of a machine, as I sort of alluded to, that you grow it, whereas the Dalek is an engineered machine. you know, and it's a fighting machine, so it had to be really sort of, it had to look brutal, and it had to feel as if it could really withstand explosions and shots and gunshots, and of course travel through time as well itself. So there were two very different machines. But I think the important thing to do is, when you're designing anything, is to think about the materials, like you said in the question, of what it's going to be made out of, and just as we as human beings are used to, take a car for instance, you know, a car is designed for us as human beings, so it's designed to work with our hands. So the steering wheel is a certain size, the buttons are a certain size, you know, the foot pedals are a certain size, where we sit in the chair and how we stretch and lean is all designed around us. So if you're designing a Dalek spaceship that hasn't got hands and feet and eyes, you've got to design it so that a Dalek can control it. So when you're designing a Dalek spaceship, you know, the sucker's got to work, you know, the laser's got to work, the eye level of the Dalek eye has got to work. So it's a totally different anatomy and architecture that you have to work with, you know. And then in terms of the Doctor, of course, the Tardis, it's more like driving a car. It has to work for the Doctor. But what was funny was when we designed the TARDIS, I knew that maybe one day the Dalek might end up in the TARDIS, so I wanted to make the floor of the TARDIS as difficult as possible for a Dalek to move on. You know? So put lots of steps in it, lots of platforms in it, a metal mesh, so that when the Dalek went across it, it was, you know, so it really couldn't sort of manoeuvre in there, you know, which would make it easier for the Doctor to be able to fight. You know? I think what I enjoy most about my job is working with the amazing people I get to work with, because I do get to work with some amazingly talented people, and then actually probably second to that is actually seeing some of the creations come to life. You know, when you guys do it, you know, you act in stuff, you make stuff, you know, you think about something, and then all of a sudden it's there, you know. And now, I don't know whether you know a gentleman called Nelson Mandela, who was very famous in South Africa. He always said that it always seems impossible until it's done, and when you start a process, you think, we're never going to be able to do this. This is too big. The mountain's too high to climb, or the river's too wide to swim across. But once you've done it, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, we've done it. We've beaten the impossible, you know. And so that's one of the things I really love is sitting in my office and thinking about something and drawing it on a piece of paper, and then 6 weeks later seeing it built, and the actors on it, and the cameramen in there, and the lighting guys in there, and they're all sort of crawling around something that 6 weeks before was just in there, you know. So that's probably my second favourite thing about the job. But my favourite thing is about meeting really talented, clever people, artists, set designers, props designers, set decorators, costume makers, makeup artists, you know, even before the actors come along. You know, that's a treat in itself. But working with those really talented people, and actually just finding those talented people as well, because, you know, you guys are all those people. You know, you are the talent, you know, and that's why it's great coming here and seeing what you guys have created. You know, it's incredible. So you get to do it in school, I get to do it sort of on a professional level, you know, where someone actually pays me to do it, which is hopefully where you guys will go one day as well. Well, I've just completed a film with a lovely lady called Mila Jokovic, who you might know from the Resident Evil films and various other films, and her husband Paul Anderson, who's the director, who are people I work with quite a lot. Paul comes to me when he's got a movie to do, and I can tell you exactly how many people we worked with, because we went to a location just outside Cape Town called Cedarburg, which is about 3.5 hours out of Cape Town, and it's called Valley of the Red Gods, and it's basically a series of mountains and rocks, and it's in the middle of nowhere, and so the only way you can go and film there is by taking your crew and setting up a camp, and we had a camp for 256 people on our crew, and everyone needed a tent, and everyone needed a toilet, and everyone needed to be fed, and that was the only way that we could go and film at this location. So all the actors sleep in tents and everybody has to go, and it's like a military operation when they set these camps up. But there was 256 people in that campsite. So it's a big crew, big crew. A lot of people to feed, a lot of people wanting breakfast and lunch and dinner and snacks. So at the moment, we just finished Monster Hunter, and now we're working on a series called Origin, and we're working on the second season of that. So the first 10 episodes have gone out, and YouTube liked it. So now they've commissioned a second season of that. So the first season consisted of these people on a spaceship flying to a planet, and the second season is going to be the people arriving on the planet. And again, we're shooting that in Cape Town, which is where I go back on Wednesday to shoot. So it's a nice big science fiction series for YouTube. So I'm the job title is called a production designer, and basically that makes me the designer for the production, the film production or the TV production. So I'll get a call from the producer. The producers normally raise the money from a TV company or from a film company, and they'll employ myself and a director initially to design and put together the movie. So I'm in charge of the visual look of the movie. So I look after all the everything that you see in the movie other than the actors. Obviously I don't do the makeup and the hair and the costumes, but I'm involved in that because tonally it all has to work together. So if you see action vehicles, or if you see all the props or all the sets, even the weather, sometimes I control the weather because I have a special effects department who will help me make it rain or make it snow or make it misty. So I'm in charge of all of those things that happen in the background, if that answers the question. I'd like to say, sadly, I travel a lot, but you can never sort of you can never moan about the amount you travel, because you know you're doing a lovely thing and a thing that you love. But I do travel a lot with my work, and I've got 2 little children, which is the saddest part of all of that, because I don't get to see them quite as much as I would like to, you know. So I've been in Cape Town now for 3 years, only coming home at Christmas. The girls, my family come out to see me. It's summer holidays and Easter, but yes, I do travel quite a lot. So I filmed in lots of places around the world. I filmed in England, because that's abroad. I filmed in Scotland, Ireland, Lithuania, Hungary, Bulgaria, Singapore, South Africa, Rome, Spain, America. I think that's about it. Yeah, that's about it. So yeah, so I do get to travel, but the downside is that you don't get to see your family, sadly. Well, from what I've seen of your previous films, I'm not sure you need much advice. You're all over it. And I've just had a tour of the workshops and seen the amazing props that have been made. I mean, it's all just incredible. You know, I mean, you're obviously a very talented bunch of people, because you seem to have grasped it. I think in all of these things, you know, keep an open mind. You know, I mean, I've seen that with your Tardis design. It's incredible. You know, you've really looked and thought hard about what you've tried to achieve there. You know, and I know Arwell came to see you earlier. You know, who is now the Doctor Who designer. Oh no, there's a new one now. There's another designer. They changed like the Doctor. I wonder if the designers can only have 11 or 12 lives regenerating. No, I think just carry on what you're doing, you know, and just keep an eye on the detail, you know, because that's what the devil's in the detail, and that's really what makes, I think, set productions apart is the detail, you know. But you guys seem to have got that. You've got that down to a T. Oh my goodness me, there were so many things, but the sonic screwdriver is always fun, you know, because you know that's something that the Doctor's always going to have on him wherever he goes. And so that was quite an interesting prop. And the first sonic screwdriver I did, you know, I wanted, again, going back to that point of making sure that it works with the Doctor. I also needed to make the sonic screwdriver look as if it worked with the Tardis, so that you could just come in and plug the sonic screwdriver into the Tardis and it would charge, a bit like an iPhone or something like that, you know. So I think the sonic screwdriver was pretty good. Obviously the TARDISes go without saying. And before I left Doctor Who, funnily enough, I'd actually designed a third TARDIS, which we were going to make, which was going to be the next TARDIS. But because I left, the BBC chose that they felt it wasn't right to use the design. So I've got a secret TARDIS that no one's ever seen, that one day it may raise its head. I'd love them to make a feature film of Doctor Who, you know, and I'd love to do that, and if I did that, then maybe I could bring the TARDIS design out. The first TARDIS I did, it took about 12 weeks, and it was quite a small, I mean, it was a big TARDIS, but it was quite a small set, and we only had enough money to build half of it. So I don't remember whether you remember the first TARDIS, but it was a sort of a bowl, upside down bowl shape, but we only had enough money to make half of it. So that took about 12 weeks. And then the second TARDIS I designed, we did a show for the BBC called Torchwood, which was another science fiction show, and that show came to an end, and we were left with a massive Torchwood set. It was huge, and I thought to myself, well, if we're not going to use that anymore, we might as well just strip all the walls and the flattage off it and reuse the metal structure, and then build the new TARDIS into that metal structure. And that we had a lot longer to build that. We had about 20 weeks to build that. So it was a much bigger build. But they take a long time, you know. And that's just the build period, because obviously there's a design period and a thought process period before that, you know. Yeah, I can. So the Monster Hunter project is based on a computer game. I don't know whether any of you have played the computer game. It's quite an old game in Japan and China. It's been around for about 15 years, but in our neck of the woods, it's only just come out as a computer game. But basically, it's all about characters that you choose. You choose your own character. You choose your weapons. As you go through the game, you earn weapons, and then you just go through these incredible environments of rocks and deserts and jungles, and you hunt down monsters, and you sadly kill them. But there's a moral to it, because when you kill them, they sort of regenerate, or they sort of rot down and become coral and lovely things, so everybody's happy apparently. But basically in the film what happens is that Mila, who plays the lead in it, is an American soldier who's out on a mission in a desert, and all of a sudden she sees this sandstorm, and she drives into the sandstorm accidentally, and lo and behold she ends up in the Monster Hunter world. And then her and her team have to basically fight their way out of the Monster Hunter world with people that they meet there. And we've got a great martial artist, a guy called Tony Jaa, who's an incredible martial artist character, who plays one of the gamers in Monster Hunter world. So he's an incredible Monster Hunter world character, fighting alongside Mila, who's an American Marine. And they try and get the soldiers out of the Monster Hunter world, and I can't tell you whether they do or not, obviously. But it was great. So all the monsters are CGI, are computer generated, but all the locations are sort of based in Africa.